This Liberty Sports Update is brought to you by Beacon Credit Union.
Just thought it was a good overall win for us. Defensively, I thought we played our most complete game start to finish. The positives were, we had 5 3-and-outs. Thought our red zone defense was really good. Thought we ran to the ball, tackled, probably better than we have all season. So those were the positives. Start to finish, thought we played a complete game. On the negatives, just a couple of the explosive plays, explosive pass play there that gave them a little bit of momentum, and just a couple of runs that popped. Overall, though, I thought it was our most complete game thus far this season, and thought it was a pretty good showing for some of our guys, and thought we had a bunch of young guys step up and make some plays for us.
All right, we'll take questions for Coach Symons. If you'll use the raise hand option, Coach, I'll start with one. Your defensive line to overcome losing Trayshawn Clark on the second series of the game. How impressed were you with that unit?
Yeah, I thought, guys like Steve Sings, freshman that hadn't played a lot and then stepped up and played, over 45, 46 snaps in the game. Kendi Charles got in there some, did some positive things. I think overall, just collectively as a group, that's not one guy. That it's a bunch of guys. It's a collective effort. To be great on the D-line, you have to have that mentality. And I thought those guys, especially in the second half, I thought early on in the game, we had there's a couple times where there's some pass rush lanes. Quarterback stepped up, and I thought Coach Aldridge did a great job, getting those guys coached up and getting them ready to go. And they came out in the second half. I thought played at a really high level.
Let's go to Damian Sordolev from the Lynchburg News in Advance.
Scott, you look at ULM and they've seemed to have found their footing in recent weeks, and look at specifically to this past Saturday against Georgia Southern, they threw the ball 54 times and 10 different receivers caught passes. And what challenge is ULM going to pose to your secondary, one that's been relatively thin so far this year with injuries?
Yeah, I think, right now we're as healthy as we've ever been, so that's a positive. Should have Tim Kid-Glass hopefully back in some form or fashion for this game. It'd probably be a limited role for him, but, would like to get him out there. So outside of that, we're pretty healthy in that group, so that's a positive. But, yeah, so their quarterback is by far the best quarterback that we've seen. We really haven't played a great quarterback that could distribute the ball consistently when his first option wasn't available. And so, what you see is, a quarterback that spreads it around. He's an equal opportunity employer. He's going to get it to whoever's open. He does a good job reading coverages, has a big arm, and also has the ability to run the ball. So I wouldn't call him, a dual threat, but he ran on Georgia Southern, and if you guys watched the end of the game, it was the game ended on the 1 inch line. So I think overall just the threat that he from a pass game standpoint, it's not, hey, you got to cover this guy. He's going to be able to spread the ball around and open up the field horizontally as well as vertically. So they've got number 17's a wideout that can really run. He's a sub-22, 200-meter guy, got behind Army. They've got some explosive playmakers. They've got 2 really good tight ends. Peterson is an all-conference kid for him, was a really good player for him in the past, and you can see why on film. So he's got a lot of weapons around him, and they've distributed the ball really well. I also think some of the stats are a little bit skewed. They've gotten behind early in some games where they've been it's caused them to throw the ball. They're going to try to come in and establish the run, I'm sure, like every good offense does, and be I would think a little bit of a balanced attack. I just think when you get behind 10, 14 points in some of these games with limited possessions, you've seen them throwing it a little bit more.
Let's go to John from the Sea of Red.
You mentioned Steve Sings there. He was a guy kind of late addition to your signing class, and maybe didn't know if he was going to be eligible this year or not, but you got him in there. And at what point did you guys know he was going to be a factor and could possibly play immediately? And what did you see out of him Saturday that really impressed you the most, especially a guy that wasn't necessarily prepared to have such a large role on Saturday?
Well, he was prepared, John, because how he prepares every single day. He is probably the most focused young man we have in practice. He soaks everything up. He is a guy that really wants to learn and wants to be great. I think when we recruited him, we knew he was going to play. He was a top-tier player at his position in the country, and we felt like he was going to have a role this season for us. So I think early on, you just – especially our first couple ball games were close games, and this was a close game too for a large portion of it. We went with some guys that had more experience at times, but Steve's a young man that I'm really, really proud of. I'm proud of how he prepares. I'm proud of how – and he's a great lesson for some of these other freshmen that maybe they've only played 5-7 snaps and it's easy to get frustrated, but maybe it's Q Reese this week that's got to play 45 snaps for us and step up and make plays like that. And that's what great teams do. It's not about one guy. It's not about – and Trey Clark would tell you the same thing. It's about us doing playing collective defense and holding each other accountable.
Coach, I got one for you. As you look at this Monroe team that's coming in here 0-4, close to a win this past week, desperate to get a win. I mean, are you expecting some desperation type plays, maybe some trick plays, gadgets, things like that?
Yeah, I think you got to prepare for that every single week, Nick. I think in that Georgia Southern game, they were one of the big deals in that game was they were 5 for 5 on fourth downs. So they might not have been as efficient as they wanted to on third down, but they were aggressive with their calling, which kept them in that game. And so I definitely think their backs against the wall, and they're going to come in here with that mentality. And they're not in my opinion, watching them on film, they are not a over football team. Georgia Southern was a really good team, and that game, like I said, came down to the 1-inch line. I just think they've had some unfortunate things and happen throughout the course of the season. But I do think they're a really good football team. I think they got, like I said, a quarterback that can really distribute it. And at the end of the day, that's where it all starts. If you don't have a quarterback, it's tough to be good on offense. You got to do a great job as a play caller, and they have a really good quarterback that distributes the ball at a high level, and I think makes good decisions with it.
Well, let's go to Damien.
Coach, we've spoken a lot this year about Anthony Butler, even back in training camp. You wanted his experience and work ethic to kind of lead the way. You didn't want him to be like that vocal leader necessarily because you had that on the defensive side. And what have you seen through his first 3 weeks of becoming a leader, becoming a guy who's a reliable guy in there with his experience and really helping those younger guys like a Carl Poole finally get his first lengthy playing time on Saturday, and what he's bringing to this defense, like that tenacity, that ability to be around the ball all the time?
Well, I think one, it's a great question. I think the first thing is just his change in maturity and his change in approach just from the spring when he got here to now, and him believing as good as I think he could be. I think he's really starting to grow into the fact that, hey, he can be a great player. And this is just like I told him after the game. I said, great game. This is the expectation every single week for you. And, he said, Coach, I know. I got you. It's not going to, go to my head or affect me. And I think that's a sign of a very mature young man. He brings Carl up here and watches film with him on their own, throughout the week and does things like that. So he's a team guy. He is, I think, become very selfless and humble. And I think he's affected everybody and made those around him better. And that's, what you want from your best players.
John, go ahead.
Coach, the last 2 weeks, you guys went up against teams that were playing their first game, so you didn't have a lot of film necessarily on them, especially a lot of transfers. As a defensive coordinator, is it a little bit of a relief? I don't know if that's the right word to use to be going up against a team that's got 4 games on film, so you got a little bit more of an idea of what to expect out of them on offense.
Yes, I think in some ways, obviously, it's great to watch film from this season. You know what I mean? When you're watching film from a year ago and you're like, all right, they might run this play, but this guy, and this guy probably aren't going to be playing. It's kind of tough when you're coaching guys to show them schematic things, but they're not seeing personnel, right? So that I think from that standpoint, it's just good for our kids to see, okay, this is what they've done this year. I think their coaching staff does a great job changing it up from week to week. I think their pass concepts really vary when you look at them throughout the course of the season, as well as their run game. And so, but I think the biggest thing probably for our kids is just to be able to see their personnel and those matchups and what those guys look like this season.
Coach, 10th in the country against the pass. Is that a little surprising, just given that you haven't been able to put all your guys out there at once? It feels like. I mean, Jimmy Fox misses the first week. Then you've got Tim King Glass missing everything up to this point. I mean, is it? What do you attribute that to?
Well, one, I think our secondary coaches, Coach Batoon and Coach Hundley, do a great job. I think it starts with the foundations, which is technique and fundamentals. And when I watch our guys, the thing I was pleased about on the back end, although we weren't always right with some alignments and things like that, that cost us on some plays. I think our kids, especially our ones, played with good technique, played with good discipline, and I think that goes back to coaching and then players buying into coaching. So, I think Coach Batoon has done a phenomenal job as far as just his influence on things in his time here. So, I first attribute it to those men and the kids that they coach buying into to their coaching. So I think that's where it starts.
Anyone have anything else for Coach Symons? Damian?
Coach, Juwan Treadwell got his first start against UNA. How did you grade his performance? Because he seemed to be a guy who had a knack for being around the ball.
I definitely think that, Damian. I think I thought he tackled well. I was really pleased with that. I love Juwan. He's got a great heart. He's a really good young man if you guys get to know him. He's eager to play. He wants to be coached. And so, I knew those first couple of weeks weren't easy because he wanted to get on the field. And, we've made some moves. I thought Scruggs was really effective there into the boundary, and he's a guy that can play both for us. That's the positive. He's a guy that we can always move back to nickel, strong safety, or we can keep him at rover. But I thought Treadwell flew around, made some plays. Had a couple errors on some things that we got to get cleaned up, but I think overall, did some really positive things for his first extended playing time.